Welcome to the Art of Money podcast with Art McPherson.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Money podcast, artofmoneyradio.com for more information or to schedule that initial consultation. Appreciate you subscribing. Now, let's get to the show. There's a clip from 60 Minutes, the news program, that was live about 10 years ago, but it's popped up again. It's titled, The Truth About 401ks. Correspondent Steve Croft interviewed a financial planner. His name was Brooks Hamilton, and here's what he said.
The fact is that the typical 401k investor is a financial novice. They don't know a stock from a line. And we give them a list of 20 or 30 mutual funds with really, really powerful names. You know, they sound like, gee, that's where I want to have my money.
What are generally the quality of the mutual funds and 401k plans?
Mediocre. I'm going to be real honest with you. With half the funds on the list, really dogs, what people would characterize as dogs, shouldn't be on the list to start with.
So that's from 10 years ago, but Art McPherson, has anything changed? I mean, is there a better place for our money than a 401k?
Well, basically, the 401k and the plan that was put in force is done by your employer, right? The employer makes those decisions, and they put it in operation for the employees. The employee doesn't have a lot of say with that. And, you know, the employer may be a small employer, may be a large employer, you never know. So when you look up 401k plans, there's fees involved and things like that. And a lot of people don't even know what the fees are, but you're just limited, right? So a 401k typically has about 25 to 35 different investment options. But a lot of times, if you look at those investment options, they're nowadays 10 or 15 of the options are target retirement date funds. And those are just a blend of the other funds available. So you might have 10 to 12 different actual mutual funds. So there's usually 3 or 4 growth stock funds, 3 or 4 mid caps, 3 or 4 small caps, bond funds, high yield funds, a stable value fund, blah, blah, blah. As you go down the list, you have all these funds that you can pick from, but you're not an expert at what you're doing. All you're doing is maybe looking at the 1, 3, 5 year rate of returns and trying to do an asset allocation or blend. But all you really know is your job as an employee and maybe your best buddy over there 2 or 3 cubicles away who gives you expert advice from his perspective.
I agree with Art. There's only about 15 to 20 options. The other ones are kind of blends of each other. But we have the ability here to get into your 401k sometimes. If you work for a large corporation here in Brevard County or Indian River County or here on the Space Coast, there's sometimes opportunities for you to move money within your 401k to what's still in the 401k, but opens up your options, right? With Fidelity, it's called the brokerage link. With other, Empower or Schwab, it's called something different, but it's where you can open up a brokerage window and invest in whatever you want. Well, that gives you the opportunity to buy whatever you want, right? You can buy that Google stock or Apple stock, but it also provides us the potential to get in there and, get better money managers on the platform for you. So we've been doing quite a bit of that this year as we've seen, those funds in the 401k just kind of do mediocre, as that clip from 10 years ago said. It's because not much has changed. If you have a Fidelity 401k, all those target date funds are Fidelity funds underneath them. Your U.S. equities, it's just all Fidelity funds, right? We like Fidelity, but maybe not necessarily all their funds. So opening up that window to, get other money managers in there, get us involved. If you're under age 59 and a half, or if you don't want to roll the money out yet, there's an opportunity that we can still help you within the 401k and have your returns better with less risk. That's always our goal.
So what's your 401k strategy look like? Sit down with the team of the McPherson Financial Group. Take advantage of that 401k X-ray, where we're going to take a deep dive into your 401k, seeing if the adjustments need to be made. Maybe you have one of those old debt accounts. Well, why are you not letting that work for you and your retirement plan? It's a 401k X-ray, and it's compliments of the team at the McPherson Financial Group. It's available when you call 321-425-8550. Again, 321-425-8550 or artofmoneyradio.com. Earlier in the show, Luke, we were talking about how expensive it is to buy food right now, inflation and meat prices, everything's going up. But as someone who owned a food truck for a little while, did you subscribe to the 5-second rule?
I subscribe to that personally, but I don't know if I'm serving the food.
You don't own the truck anymore, so you could be honest.
No, not there. No, that's bad. That's bad, Mark.
Yes.
Art McPherson, you're making a sandwich at the house. Piece of ham falls on the floor. Bend down 5 seconds. Pick it up.
I never get a chance. I have 3 dogs in the house. It is gone.
It's gone.
Yeah, absolutely gone.
Here in the Owens household, it's not the 5
They
second.
just go. They already ready. They're already by me whenever I'm getting food out because they know they're smart. So there is no 5 second rule in my house. It's called the 5/10 of a second rule, and the dogs have already. It's just which dog got it first.
In my house, it's the whenever I feel like bending down to pick it up rule. Do it eventually. There was a
Just leave it there. Good one. Good
you know
one.
what? I'll get it in a second. There was a poll that said that more than 40% of adults will eat things off the floor as long as they can pick it up immediately. So within 5 seconds. Look, man, I worked at a restaurant. Come on now. It was I'll get it when I get it. Listen, when the market drops, there is no 5 second rule. So how long does it take in a down market for people to actually recover, to bend down to pick up their losses, if you will?
Well, it depends what type of down market. If we're talking 2008 and 9, probably about 3 or 4 years. If you're not doing anything, if you're adding to it, that number's sooner, maybe 2 or 3 years. If we're talking about COVID, where the government shut everything down and then crashed the market, and then the government bailed the market out, that was what, 30 days, 45 days? I mean, you were back to where you were within a couple months, I'll call it. 30 to 40 trading days. So, the market tanked and then the government stepped in, bailed us out. So the market recovery, is more about how much time do you have to wait on it. And if you're in retirement or within 5 years of retirement, you may not have enough time. And every event seems to be different. So I'm just going back on the most major 2 events that we've had. And so the next event's going to be different. It could be, quicker recovery, faster crash. It could be a slower crash, slower recovery. You just don't know. So you just need your money in different places other than just the stock market.
Yeah, I think one of the things, Mark, that you talk about the 5 second rule, right? I wish that the stock market recoveries were 5 seconds. Unfortunately, it can be very painful. And one of the worst ones is when you go through like an 08, 09 where you have a 50% correction, and that's happening during the time of retirement, right? So you're making distributions, you're doing withdrawals, the market corrects like that, and then you have your withdrawal on top of it. So last year, as an example, you had a market correct 15%. You're making a withdrawal of 5%. Now you've seen your account drop 20%. So you have to be careful. You want to make sure you have money that won't go down, or money that's in areas that is stable or less volatile than the stock market itself, so that when you need that income check, instead of having to sell assets that are off 15, 16, maybe even 20% or more, you can actually take it for money that hasn't got affected.
You're talking about the major events that affect the stock market. And I know, obviously, the McPherson Finance Group, you don't have that crystal ball, but you're starting to see the stories pop up about the return of COVID. Another booster shot is on the way. Some schools, some, business is already starting to say you need to mask back up. In your personal opinion, should we start getting prepared for the possibility of the government overreaching again with COVID?
I think the government's going to have a much tougher time to overreach this time because you actually said overreach, right, in your clarification. I think before it was a pandemic, and I think before the American public was, assuming our government was giving us good information. But when you look at the data now and you look at 2 years post-COVID, it didn't help wearing a mask, it doesn't look like. It didn't help getting the vaccines, it doesn't look like. We would have probably all been better if we had just the herd immunization. Or took, it looks like, ivermectin and some of the things that Trump had said actually did work pretty well against the virus, but we were not really told that, at the time. So some of the things that were withheld and some of the things that were forced upon the public has caused a lot of distrust, and I think they're going to have a tough time pushing the public back in that scenario.
Yeah, I say overreach because you hit the nail on the head. I think hindsight being 2020, I think shutting down some businesses, but others were able to stay open, causing small businesses to go bankrupt while big businesses were able to flourish. A little bit, it felt like an overreach.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And I think it's not constitutional. Like, it doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution the government can shut down a private business. It doesn't say anywhere in the Constitution the government can shut down a church, a charity, and all the different things they were doing. They actually suspend the Constitution for them to be able to do these temporary things like that. And I just think that it's going to be a tough ask to the public because basically they're stewards of our money, and they've been doing a very poor job of that. And they're also stewards. We put them in position, at least I think we do, through elections. And they're supposed to do the will of the people, and it sure doesn't seem like they do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I remember one of the local beaches here was shut down, so you had to park across the street. walk across A1A through the ropes, through the orange barrels.
Yep.
When you go to the beach, you would feel like that should be the safest place, right? The fresh air, the breeze, you're outdoors. So when the government starts shutting down outdoor areas and beaches and, things that it was odd. It was very odd. Hindsight, it's extremely odd.
It's going to be an amazing case study in about 10 years from now when they start writing books on how we reacted to that and how it affected our bottom line and our money and small businesses. So that's why I ask, are people starting to get a little concerned? Will the market start to be affected by all these little conversations about the return of COVID? But it's also an election year, so the politicians are going to do what makes them look best. So we'll see. 321-425-8550 or visit artofmoneyradio.com. Benjamin Franklin said 2 things you can count on in life are death and taxes. Someone also said true, but at least death doesn't get worse every time Congress reconvenes. So tax laws are constantly changing, and going into retirement in a low tax bracket with tax-free money is a plus. But Art McPherson and Luke McCarty, what is the downside of going through retirement with all your savings in a 401k?
Everything is taxable when you distribute it. So, nowadays there's different brackets for everything, right? So we have a 10% income bracket. We've got a 12% income bracket. We've got a 22, a 24, and up and up and up from there. So everything that you do when you distribute from a 401k is taxable income. So if you take too much out of your 401k, then your Social Security becomes taxable. And up to 85% of your Social Security can now be taxable. So if you have a pension and if you also have investment income coming from that 401k, you can get out there where you thought you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retired, but in reality, you're in the same bracket or maybe even a higher bracket, because if you've been a good saver and done a good job, you now have more money than you've ever had in your history of working. And now you're going to distribute those funds that you wanted for retirement to be able to do the travel you wanted to do and so forth, but it's all taxable income. So everything coming in the door is taxable income to you. And when you put it all together on your tax return, all of a sudden you're finding yourself paying the same amount of taxes you were actually paying while working.
Yeah, and the downside, of course, is you're kind of just trusting that the government's not going to raise taxes on you. You have this snowball of money that you haven't paid taxes on. So you're going to pay it at some point. You're either going to pay it now because you're doing a Roth conversion, or you're going to die with it and your kids are going to pay the tax. So somebody's paying the tax. So the risk you have with all your money in a 401k is that you think taxes are going to stay the same or go down in the future. And the way the government's spending, there's no way they can go down. I mean, there's always a possibility somebody comes in and cuts income tax again, but that lost a lot of money too, because the government essentially cut revenue but increased spending. So that's your risk of the 401k, is that you haven't done enough tax planning, and rates can go to whatever they go to in the future, the unknown. But my assumption is they're going to be higher, and you're going to pay a third of that 401k is not even yours, and you're just floating it down the road to whatever the government decides to do with it.
321-425-8550. Now we have an excuse for being late. It's called time blindness. So, Art McPherson, Luke McCarty, are you somebody that shows up 5 minutes early or right on time? Where do you fall in that category?
Well, it depends. If I'm dropping my kids off at school and I'm in that school car line, who knows? But, in general, from the high school football to college football, if you're not early, you're late. Yep. I used to get in trouble for being 10 minutes early. And the coach would be like, "You're not early enough." I'm like, "I'm 10 minutes early." And then I'd have to do bear crawls, and it was silly. The torture I went through to play a college sport, right? It was fun, though.
What about you, Art McPherson? When you go to play golf, are you the person that shows up? If it's a 10 a.m. tee time, you're there at 8:45 on the range? Or if it's a 10 a.m., you come rolling in like Dukes of Hazzard at 9:59 to the first tee box?
That would be Mike Kinnett. He comes rolling in right before tee time. I like to hit a couple balls. I'd like to be there about a half hour, maybe 45 minutes early, so I can putt a little bit and, hit enough balls that I start sweating crazily. Right. Here in Florida, you hit more than 2 shots and you're sweating already. But I like to hit a few balls, hit my irons, hit my woods, and then hit 3 or 4 drive shots to make sure I've got my alignment good. That tends to help me a lot. But I don't want to, if we have an 8:15 tee time, I don't show up at 6 now.
And Kinnett is the guy that rolls up right before you tee off and then can't figure out why he's putting everything in the water.
Yeah, can't figure out why he's slicing it.
Yeah, you can't figure out why his shots are a little inconsistent.
Well, speaking of time blindness, I want you to hear this. This comes off of TikTok, where this girl believes there should be more accommodations for time blindness.
And yeah, I think that a culture where workers are just cut off because they struggle with being on time, when there's other solutions that we can look to, I think that just anybody who thinks it's okay to just treat people like that, yeah, that culture needs to be dismantled. And then I asked that person, how can you feel good about yourself upholding this kind of system? And then to think I'm entitled. No, if people think it's okay to treat others like this, that's entitlement.
Wait, so she's saying that don't get mad if somebody's late?
Yes.
I don't follow all the TikTok lingo.
She is basically defending those who are chronically late, saying, don't you dare judge someone who can't be on time.
Well, I mean, I would give a lot of grace to Luke and Stacy, because getting out the door, it must take them at least 45 minutes just to pack the diaper bag. But they can plan around that, right? You learn that it takes you 45 minutes just to move as a group to the car. So you kind of learn how to provide those time slots for yourself. I remember it was an ordeal to do anything, right? So if you had to leave the house and put the kids in the car, it was like you would look at each other and go, is it worth it? Is this something we really want to do? Or are we just going to stay home or not? But you can't, I get it. I understand, but if you're not there on time, when we do events for our clients and stuff, and we've got to be on time because we have maybe 200 people at an event, I'm sorry, but we're going to start on time. And if you're late, yeah, you might come to the movie, but after we're done with our little talk time, you might be watching,
halfway through
the movie or 10 minutes late after the movie. It is what it is. But if you come to one of our seminars and we're doing a seminar, we always start on time. We might give people 5 minutes, if we feel like there was a reason for that. But basically, we want to be respectful for the people that were there on time. Otherwise, we're disrespecting them too.
Just hearing this TikToker.
And yeah, I think that a culture where workers are just cut off because they struggle with being on time, when there's other solutions that we can look to, I think that just anybody who thinks it's okay to just treat people like that, yeah, that culture needs to be dismantled.
This just makes me fear for the next generation.
That culture needs it. So timeliness, promptness needs to be dismantled.
How old is she, Mark? Do you know?
I'm just going to go ahead and say 22.
Yeah, I'm going to say
23.
young. She sounds young.
Yeah, the yeah and the like and the vocal fry. that's the employee that I want right there.
That's a work from home employee for life.
Oh, boy.
Let me spin it there, because they say that always being late and this quote unquote time blindness can also lead to procrastination. And I know you've seen that. People not putting a plan together with enough time to make it work for their retirement. How often does that happen when people almost wait to hey, I want to put a plan together, but I also want to retire in 6 months? You can't do that.
That's true. But we do see it a lot. There's a lot of people that start really getting serious for retirement planning at 40. And they really should have gotten serious at 30 or even mid-20s. It's just when you're in your mid-20s, you're not serious about retirement. You're just not. You're talking about, the games with your buds, and you're more worried about the day-to-day routine of things than you are about planning for retirement. That's not even on your radar.
And yeah.
Exactly. So you're worried more about stuff like that rather than retiring and so forth. You're still worried at finding the right woman. I don't know if that person would be on my radar, but you're you're worried about finding the right woman, not planning for retirement typically.
Is there a right age, though? Like you said, some people start at 40, some people start at 55, 60. I know everybody's plan is different. No two plans are the same. But do you find that, hey, by this age, you should be serious?
Well, it's the magic of compounding. So when you have 25 or 30 years for money to grow, and you can make long-term returns on that in that 8 to 12% range, it makes a huge difference on how long you have that money to cook. And when you're contributing and then your employer is also contributing and matching those funds, it can make a big, big difference for you over the long haul on how much money you have to live off of later. So the later you wait, now Luke and I have a little bit of weapons in our toolbox. We've got the catch-up provision when you hit age 50. But then that requires you, Mark, if you're in this scenario, we got to put more money aside to help make up for lost time. So you can put more money in, but now you're having to put, instead of 10% of your income, now you're having to put 15, 20, maybe 25% of your income to help catch up for lost time. So you can do it. There are ways and provisions to do it. It's more painful on your side because now you're giving up a little bit of those beer floaters, like you like to call them, to be able to put more into your 401k.
And yeah.
Look at you.
Thanks for listening. Want more from Art McPherson of McPherson Financial Group? Find us online at artofmoneyradio.com.
We are an independent financial services firm helping individuals create retirement strategies using a variety of financial and insurance products to custom suit their needs and objectives. Securities offered through World Equity Group, Inc., member FINRA and SIPC, a registered investment advisor. Investment advisory services offered through ProStatus Group, LLC. McPherson Financial Group and ProStatus Group, LLC are separate entities and are not owned or controlled by World Equity Group, Inc. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments can fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Investment financial professionals are not licensed in all 50 states. Art McPherson is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult with your attorney, accountant, and or tax advisor for advice concerning your particular circumstances. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Arthur McPherson. Florida Insurance License number A174725.
Today's show has been a work of art.